Okay, we're recording now.
Okay, I think we're ready to go. Okay. I'm going to close the door a second. Okay, so if you haven't figured it out yet, I'd like to talk about Shir HaShirim. Unless you have pets, you should turn your microphones back on, and we can actually talk about this a little. What I'm not going to do is teach Shir HaShirim because that's just way too much for us to accomplish. What I want to talk about is more about Shir HaShirim rather than try to teach Shir HaShirim. Chazal had a real problem with Shir HaShirim. And
Why?
I'm going to demonstrate for us just how severe the problem was and try to understand what it was that bothered Chazal about Shir HaShirim. Let's start with the Mishnah. Okay. My notebook. Okay. So we start with Mishnah Yadayim. Mishnah Yadayim is in Masechet Taharot, which deals with all sorts of laws of, not Masechet, Seder Taharot, which deals with all sorts of laws of Tumah and Tahara. Masechet Yadayim is what it sounds like. It's about hands. It's about all those things that become tamei when you touch them, or you become tamei if you touch them. And we can see here, it's from the 5th Perek 5, Mishnah 3. It starts here. Kol kitvei hakodesh mitami'in et hayadayim, Shir HaShirim v'kohelet mitami'im et hayadayim. Okay, that almost sounds like a redundancy. It says Kol Kitvei Kodesh Mitamin et Hayadayim. So what's the backstory there? Chazal were looking to force people to stop storing their Sifrei Kodesh, whatever those might happen to be, scrolls. They didn't have books. Chazal were trying to keep people from storing their scrolls with their wheat.
Well,
okay. Why would you store your books with your wheat? Because we're not talking about stam wheat. We're talking about truma. We're talking about basically Kohanim or the non-Kohanim who have already set aside the truma to give to the Kohanim, and they considered it to be Kodesh. And they took it very seriously, and then they stored it in a safe place. And they took their Sfarim seriously, and they would put them in the same safe place. The problem is that the rodents who were attracted to the Truma HaKedusha would be attracted to the scrolls and eat the scrolls, and then the scrolls were getting destroyed. So what Chazal did to prevent that from happening was to make this rule that Kitvei Kodesh Mitamin Yadayim, anytime you touched one of your Chumash, your Shir HaShirim, your Tanakh, you would have to wash your hands. And that was enough of a nuisance to get people to stop storing their books together with their wheat. Okay, that's the story. Kol kitvei kodesh mitamin et hayadayim, that's the halacha. Shir HaShirim v'kohelet mitamin et hayadayim. Now that sounds redundant because if we assume that Shir HaShirim and Kohelet are kitvei kodesh, why do I need a separate line to tell me? If we say Kol Kitvei Kodesh Mitamin Tayadayim, that obviously includes Shir HaShirim and Kohelet. If we look at the rest of the Mishnah, there's no discussion of any other Sifrei Kodesh. It's just Shir HaShirim and Kohelet. So right away, when we look at this Mishnah, something's wrong. Something's going on. And indeed, we'll find it. So first of all, Kitvei Kodesh Mitamin Yadayim. Shir Hashirim and Kohelet are also Metamei Yadayim. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shir Hashirim Metamei Yadayim, the Kohelet Machloket. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Kohelet Eino Metamei Yadayim, Shir Hashirim Machloket. So, however you want to read the rest of this Mishnah, it's clear that Shir Hashirim is being taken more seriously than Kohelet. And we're going to see other sources as well. What? Oh, that wasn't aimed at me. Okay. So we see that there's a machloket about the status of these Sifrei Kodesh, Shir Hashirim and Kohelet. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kohelet mikulei Beit Shammai umichumrei Beit Hillel. Beit Hillel were machmir, and Kohelet and Beit Shammai are mekel. I guess it depends how you look at it. You might say they're machmir, that Shir Hashirim is metamei yadayim. Fine. Clearly, there's a machloket going on here. Let's take a step back. Forget about the essence of the machloket. What's going on here? Clearly, Chazal are uncomfortable. In English, you might say ambivalent about the status of Shir Hashirim and Kohelet, and we'll see in another source, Mishlei as well. What's bothering them about Kohelet and Shir Hashirim? Well, for one thing, they're too long, right? For those of us who sit in shul and listen to it being read, it's just too long. But I don't think that's what was bothering them. What's bothering them is that, like, we look at Shir Hashirim, the name of God is not mentioned anywhere. It's not even hinted at. Maybe it's hinted at. Maybe we'll find one hint. There's no Shem Hashem. And if we read Shir Hashirim, it's not at all clear that this is a Sefer Kodesh. If you didn't know it was a Sefer Kodesh, would you guess that it's a Sefer Kodesh?
Definitely not.
Right. Does it have the essence of a Sefer Kodesh? Is there any mention of God? Are there Nevi'im? Are there mitzvot? Is there theology? What's this about? Chazal have this huge ambivalence. Okay? So think about what we know about Shir Hashirim. We all know it because either we grew up in shuls where they read it Friday night, or we have it at least on Shabbat Chol Hamoed Pesach. We're familiar with it. We're familiar with the text. It's become a lot of modern phrases in modern Hebrew are taken from Shir Hashirim. So we're vaguely familiar with it, but we don't know the story at all. And you could even ask, is there a story? Okay. So we're back to the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Arzai, Mikubalani mipi shivim u'shnayim zaken. He's claiming not just his own testimony here, but 72 Chachamim gathered. Bayom shehoshivu at Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah b'shiva, the famous day when Rabban Gamliel was deposed as the Nasi, and Elazar ben Azariah was made, at least temporarily, the Nasi. One of the things they accomplished is that they all sat down and they gave Piskei Halacha on all sorts of open questions that Rabban Gamliel was avoiding dealing with. So we have the Masechet Eduyot, and we have other various Mishnayot all over Shas. The Daf Yomi people have just been doing page after page of Bo Bayom, 18 things that were decided that day. And we have Masechet Eduyot, which has dozens of things that were decided that day. So Rabbi Shimon ben Azai is telling us on that day, when they were giving Psak Halacha, Shir Hashirim v'Kohelet mitameim et hayadayim. They decided that Shir Hashirim and Kohelet are mitamei yadayim, which is another way of saying, let's be very clear about this, which is another way of saying that Shir Hashirim and Kohelet are part of Tanakh. If Shir Hashirim and Kohelet are not mitamei yadayim, they're not Sifrei Kodesh, they're not part of Tanakh. We have this idea that Tanakh is a done deal. We know what Tanakh is. No, we don't know what Tanakh is. We can't assume anything. Here in this Mishnah, the process by which Shir HaShirim and Kohelet became members of the Sifrei Kodesh, it's happening in real time. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Chas v'shalom, lo nechlach adam b'Yisrael al Shir HaShirim shelo metameh et hayadayim. Rabbi Akiva doesn't want to hear about this at all. Rabbi Akiva says, everyone agreed about Shir HaShirim that it's Sifrei Kodesh. She'ein kol ha'olam kedai kiyom shenitan bo Shir HaShirim liYisrael. She'kol ha'keduvim Kodesh, Shir HaShirim Kodesh Kodeshim. I'm wondering about this word ketuvim. Does he mean ketuvim the way we mean Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, ketuvim? Or does he even mean, so is he saying that Shir HaShirim is the holiest of the books in the Sefer Ketuvim? Or is he saying, he's comparing it to all the Kitvei Kodesh, that Shir HaShirim is Kodesh Kodeshim of all the Kitvei Kodesh? We don't know. It's an interesting question. And adds Rabbi Akiva, V'im nichlaku lo nichlaku ela al kohelet. So Rabbi Akiva isn't even entertaining the possibility that there's a disagreement about Shir HaShirim. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Yoshua ben Chamiv shel Rabbi Akiva. If I did the math right, that makes him a nephew. Kidivrei ben Azai. What did Ben Azai said? Ben Azai said, Mekubalani mipi shivim v'shem zkenim. Shir HaShirim v'kobal metamin et hayadayim. He's acknowledging that it was a machloket. He's acknowledging it's machloket, but the decision was made. So indeed, according to him, there's a machloket. Okay. The next source is from Avot Rabbi Natan. Tanaitic, extra, it's not really Mishnayot. Mishnah, we'll skip the first line, it has nothing to do with us. Barishona hayu omrim mishlei v'shir hashirim mekohelet genuzim hayu. Shehem hayu omrim mishalot ve'einan min haketuvim. At the beginning, Shir HaShirim, Kohelet, and Mishlei were not considered Kitvei Kodesh. Genuzim, not only were they not Kitvei Kodesh, they were set aside. The Sfarim HaGenuzim are not merely not Kodesh, but we're actively discouraging people from learning them. Why? Because they said they are Stam Mishalim. Veinan min haktuvim. They're not written Baruch HaKodesh. Amdu v'ganzu otam ad shabau anshe knesset hagadola upershu otam. I think this is a very important sentence. They were left set aside as non-kitvei kodesh until the anshe knesset hagadola explained them, explicated them, showed that they were not stam mishalim, and we're going to talk about what are mishalim. But they're not, by explicating these books, they elevated them to the level of Kitvei Kodesh. In effect, the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, they were the ones who wrote Shir HaShirim. Obviously, Shlomo wrote it. But the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah gave it meaning that allowed them to become Kitvei Kodesh. Okay. Let's try to make sense out of all this. First of all, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is being very aggressive in his defense of Shir HaShirim. It's not just Kodesh. It's Kodesh Kodeshim. Perhaps there's a personal side to this. That Shir HaShirim, at its simplest level, or its base level, is in some way a love story. And Rabbi Akiva famously has his, the Gemara describes his special love with his wife Rachel, how she married him al Tanai, that he would go learn, that it was thanks to his wife's devotion and insistence that enabled Rabbi Akiva to acquire the world of Torah and to become the leading scholar that he was. So maybe for Rabbi Akiva, a love story with his wife actually has special meaning. But I think it's much more deeper than that. Notice that he calls it Kodesh Kodashim. It's not just Kodesh, but it's holy and holiness squared. And what I'd like to suggest is that Rabbi Akiva is telling us that both the mashal and the nimshal, the metaphor and its deeper interpretation, are both holy, not just the nimshal, but the mashal as well, which sort of first forces us to ask, what is a mashal? So we're going to do that. I'll just add, there's a Tosefta that says that Shir HaShirim is written with Ruach HaKodesh and therefore is mitameh, and Kohelet is lo nem Rabba Ruach HaKodesh and therefore is not mitameh. We see the conclusion of the Mishnah is indeed that Shir HaShirim and Kohelet and Mishnah are all considered Kitvei Kodesh. One more source before we discuss what is a mashal. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin that there are Arba Melachim b'Shalosh Hedyotot. No, backwards. 3 Melachim b'Arba Hedyotot who have no chelek ba'olam haba. And the Gemara suggests Ratzu Losif Shlomo. They wanted to add Shlomo HaMelech to the list of the kings who has no chelik b'olam haba, which is quite a nasty thing to say about anybody. But as we'll see, Shlomo, at various periods of his life, seems to have lost his way religiously. And the Gemara suggests that they wanted to put him on that list. And the Gemara explains why he's not. They tell two versions of the story. One version, that David HaMelech came to the Anshe Knesset, the Gedolah, who are sitting, the Sanhedrin, they're sitting and discussing whether Shlomo should be on this list. Comes to them in Ruach HaKodesh, I don't know. One way or another, David comes to the Chachamim and he throws himself on the floor and he's begging them, in my name, in my benefit, please do not put Shlomo on this list of people who have no chelek b'olam haba. There's an implication there that indeed Shlomo deserved to be punished that way or to be described that way. But David is saying, for my, on my merit, don't do that. The second version of that says, Eish yatzah mikpi kodesh kodeshim, that a fire came out of the kodesh kodeshim and started burning up the ground around the chachamim, and they realized that they were making a mistake and they backed off. I think the implication there is that Shlomo most certainly did not deserve to be considered someone who has no chelek b'olam haba. And in fact, God himself is saying, have you lost your minds? We're talking about Shlomo HaMelech. We're talking about the Shlomo HaMelech who wrote Shir HaShirim, which is Kodesh Kodeshim. Let's talk a little bit about Shlomo. Why is Shlomo getting into trouble? Let's look for a text here. Okay. You cannot see the text, can you? Okay. How about now? How about now? Okay. Now you should be able to see it. Yes.
Yep,
can we see
it?
Okay. So when Shlomo HaMelech is born, this is the second child of David and Bathsheba. The first child died, Kiliav. Vayishlach biyad Natan hanavi, vayikra et shemo Yididya ba'avur Adonai. The Navi comes to David to name the child, the one that David is naming Shlomo Ba'avur Hashem. God himself is naming Shlomo Yedidyah. Yedidyah meaning the beloved of God. So from birth, Shlomo is the beloved of God. And here, the beginning of Sefer Melachim, Shlomo has just become the king. Vayehav Shlomo et Adonai lalechet b'chukot David aviv rak babamot hu mizabeach umekater. The only flaw is he has not yet built the mikdash, so he's bringing korbanot on a bama. And the theme of the korbanot on a bama is going to continue for the entirety of the books of Melachim and through all the Nevi'im. It's a great argumentation about bamot, but Vayahav Shlomo et Adonai. Shlomo has great love for God. He is reciprocating the love of God that God named him Yedidyah, the beloved of God, and Shlomo loves God. But now we're in chapter 11. Vamelech Shlomo ahav nashim nachriot rabot, vet bat paro, Moaviot, Ammoniot, Adamiot, Sidaniot, Chitiot. Shlomo seems to have a problem with women. So Shlomo seems to have gone from loving God to loving women. Now you could say that need not be exclusive, but look at the next pasuk. Min haguyim asher amar Adonai ben Israel lo tavou bahem vehem lo yavou bachem. Achen yatu et livavchem acharei Elohehem. Do not join together with the women of these other nations, because they will lead your heart astray. But notice the very interesting, ambiguous word at the end of the pasuk, Bahem davak Shlomo la'ahava. Now, if we're talking about the women, it should say Bahen, not Bahem. And the most proximate word to Bahem is actually Elohehem. They're false gods. So we could read this pasuk as meaning that Shlomo loved the women, Bahen davak Shlomo la'ava, or we could read this pasuk to mean the first one means he loved the women, and in the second pasuk it's saying they will lead your heart astray to follow the other gods, they who Shlomo attached himself to, the foreign gods. This pasuk is very ambiguous. It's a very problematic pasuk. Problematic not because we don't believe it's true. It's tragically we do believe it's true. That Shlomo HaMelech, at least for a period of time, was led astray by these wives. And the Gemara says he didn't actually bring sacrifices to these foreign gods. He merely allowed his wives to do so down the block from the Beit HaMikdash. Either way, it's a problematic situation. The best you can say is that he allowed Avodah Zarah in Yerushalayim. The pshat of the psukim is much worse than that. Okay, so we're getting a sense for that there's a problem with Shlomo. And we go back to the beginning of the discussion and we said, what is Chazal's ambivalence towards Shir HaShirim? And I said, well, because there's no Shem Hashem, this story, it's not overt what he's driving at, but it's actually worse. The person who wrote the book is potentially problematic. And Chazal need to ask themselves, which Shlomo wrote Shir HaShirim? Was it the Shlomo who is Ohev Hashem? Or is it the Shlomo who is Ohev Nashim Nochriot? Is it the Shlomo who allows Avodah Zarah in Yerushalayim? Or is it the Shlomo who built the Beit HaMikdash? Chazal asked themselves this question. And if you say that this story is a metaphor for the relationship between a man and his God, you need to ask the question, which God are we talking about here? So there's this huge ambivalence, and you can understand why certain members of Anshe Knesset Gedolah, Chazal, they would say, I'd rather not have this discussion. Maybe we should just as it says in the Avot Rabbi Natan, nignezu, the books were set aside and discouraged from learning. Okay. Excuse me. What is a mashal? I keep using the word. Using the word, and I think it's time to discuss it. This is Rambam Moreh Nevuchim, his introduction to the Moreh Nevuchim. Rambam is telling us, among other things, that not only are Divrei Torah written in the form of Mishalim, but even Chazal themselves, all of their Agadot, all of the Midrashim are written as Mishalim, metaphors. And Rambam wants to tell us something very important about metaphors. He believes that metaphors are in and of themselves important and central to our ability to understand religious themes. One of the problems Rambam tells us that we have is that language has only so many words. Our vocabulary is limited. At a certain point, you run out of words. At a certain point, you run out of ideas. And beyond that, certain ideas are so complex that they simply cannot be spelled out at all. And other ideas, they're complex and they're difficult to spell out to people who don't have years and years of experience in studying theology, and they don't have the vocabulary to understand theology. So we dress up the ideas in metaphors. And for Rambam, metaphors are a very powerful tool. So he wants to quote a pasuk from Mishlei. Amar HaChacham, Tapuchei zahav b'maskiyot kesef davar davur al ofanav. Golden apples in a silver mesh basket is a beautiful thing, a well-formed thing. What is he telling us? He's telling us, he's making a metaphor of the metaphor and explaining to us what it means. The metaphor, the mashal, is the silver basket. The ultimate goal is the tapuach zahav. But we need to see, we see glimpses through the little holes in the mesh of the silver basket. We see glimpses of the golden apples. Eventually, we will get to an understanding of the golden apples, or we won't. But the basket that holds the golden apple is not merely a paper bag. It's not a plastic bag that you got in the makolet. The silver basket, in and of itself, needs to be aesthetic. It needs to be beautiful. It needs to be dressed up. It has value in and of itself. And I was hinting at that when Rabbi Akiva said, Kodesh Kodashim. I'm thinking of this, where the maskiyot kesef, which have huge value, they're kodesh in and of themselves. The metaphor, the mashal, needs to be perfect and holy as well, in addition to the golden apples that are hidden behind it. Let me turn this around. Yes, okay. ראה איפה מה נפלא דיבור זה המתאר את המשל המשוכלל. שכן אומר הוא שדיבר בעל שתי פנים. A metaphor needs to be seen for both layers, both levels. The simple story of the mashal has to have merit in and of itself. It has to have value. It has to be well done, and it has to be well written. It needs to be intelligible on its own level. Sheyesh lo pshat v'yesh lo mashma'ut nisteret. There's the hidden level and there's the overt level. The overt level has to have value too. Tzarich
You just click on it and it opens it automatically.
צריך שפשטו יהיה יפה ככסף, ומשמעותו הנסתרת צריכה להיות יפה מפשוטו. But the hidden level needs to be even nicer. That's why he's saying it's golden apples hidden behind the silver. The quality of the nimshal needs to be even greater than the quality of the mashal. עד שמשמעותו הנסתרת תהיה ביחס לפשוטו ככסף ביחס לזהב. So the Rambam is, of course, writing poetically here too, and that's very nice. I said that already. Okay. Rambam goes on to claim that all the Nevi'im wrote, Dash yesh shtei drachim b'mishlei ha-nevuah, yesh mehem mishalim asher kol milah b'mashal kovat mashma'ut, v'yesh mehem asher ha-mashal b'shleimuto modia al ha'inyan ha-nimshal b'shleimuto. There are mishalim, there are metaphors where the details of the story matter, and there's a perfect alignment between the metaphor and its ultimate meaning. And there are others where the details don't really matter and they're just there to dress up the story. But even then, the story is always, the mashal needs to be elegant. Notice that in the Agadot Chazal, God is always represented as the king. Not because God is always in the role of a king, but because it's just not respectful for God to be represented as someone who isn't the king. The other point is that a mashal needs to have some sort of hint, what the Parshanim call a remez to the nimshal. If the mashal is so obtuse that we can't begin to understand what is the point, then that's not a particularly good nimshal, and not a particularly good mashal, and we're never going to get to the nimshal. And to some degree, that's a big problem that we're going to have with Shir HaShirim. The hints to the nimshal are very difficult to find, assuming that they're there. And the story that's being told is so dense and so obtuse. I mean, it's a fine little story, but what does it have to do with the nimshal? Where is the nimshal? The truth is that ad hayom hazeh, I can't tell you anything about tomorrow, but ad hayom hazeh, no one has really written a satisfying explanation of what is the actual nimshal of Shir HaShirim. I'd like to quote Rav Saadia Gaon in his introduction to his Perush, his notes on Shir HaShirim, and he gives two metaphors of his own to the problem of Shir HaShirim. He says, obviously, it's a mashal v'nimshal. And he says there are two different metaphors that he wants to use. One, it's like a lock, but we've lost the key. So the lock is the nimshal, the deeper story that we're trying to reveal, but we've lost the key. I think the implication there is that we once actually knew what Shir HaShirim was about and what it means, but we've lost the key. And the truth is, you could try every tool you've got, and you try all the other keys you've got lying around in the drawer that you don't know what they open, so you might as well try it on that lock. And every time you try, you get nowhere. You're wasting time. Maybe you're even wrecking the lock in the process, and you're making no progress. That's one way of looking at Saadia's metaphor. But he gives a second metaphor. He says it's like a precious pearl. Now, we've never actually had that precious pearl. We don't necessarily even know what it looks like. But the act of looking for it, at least it's not destructive. We look, we discover other things, we come up with ideas. Sadia is giving us two different approaches to how perhaps we should be understanding the riddle of Shir HaShirim. And he doesn't give us any indication of which explanation he prefers. Let me get rid of this. Whoa, right. Okay, that's good. And let's open another one of these. Let's open. What do I do with it? 1 second. Excuse me a second. I'm going to look for the source sheet that I think I sent to myself. Oh, here it is. Okay. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? I guess not. Okay, share screen. Here we go. Okay. Rambam here is relating to Shir HaShirim. This is Rambam in Hachot Yesodei Torah. He's talking about the holy names of God, which are forbidden to be erased. And that's not a simple subject because there are a lot of names that we don't know what their status is. For example, Adonai could mean the name of God, or it could mean my master, right? And there are many like that. And sometimes it means this, and sometimes it means that. And there are other names like Tzvaot, right? So we in some places Hashem Tzvaot is a divine name. And in other places, like Shir HaShirim, Tzvaot might not mean anything more than the plural of tzvi, deers, gazelles. So at the end, this is the last halacha in the chapter that deals with that discussion. Kol hashemot ha'amurim, no, not that one. Kol shlomo ha'amur b'shir hashirim kodesh. Rambam here is quoting the Gemara in Masechet Shavuot that the men in the Nimshal of Shir HaShirim, Shlomo, every time you see the word Shlomo, it's really referring to God. So Kol Shlomo Hamur B'Shir HaShirim Kodesh. That's an astounding statement. But then he adds, V'harehu kishar kinuyim, chutz mizeh, it doesn't matter. Kishar kinuyim means the nicknames of God, like we say Hashem. To say Hashem is not a Kodesh name. According to most poskim, to say God is not a Kodesh name, and you could erase God in a foreign language. There poskim will say otherwise, but it's a kinui. It's a euphemism, a nickname for God that it's not actually a name of God. You're allowed to erase it. So Rambam says something enigmatic here. He says, on the one hand, the word Shlomo is actually Kodesh. On the other hand, he says it's like a kinui, which means you're allowed to erase it. So what has he said? If it's Kodesh, then why are you allowed to erase it? If it's Kodesh, what does it mean to say it's a kinui? In the introduction to the Shir HaShirim in the Dat Mikra, he actually brings this Rambam and says, I have no idea what the Rambam is trying to tell us here because he seems to be contradicting himself. What's the point in telling me it's Kodesh if the next sentence you can tell me you're allowed to erase it? In Rav Rabinovich's Yad Pshuta, he suggests that there is a practical application that if someone were to take a vow or to curse someone b'shem Hashem, which is forbidden to do, and if you do so, you're punished with makot, for 39 lashes, up to 39 lashes. So if someone were to curse someone b'shem Hashem by saying, I curse you by the name of he who is called Shlomo in Shir HaShirim, that person, he used the name that is Kodesh, and therefore is Chayav Malkot. It's a difficult question, but we see that for Rambam, it's quite clear. Rambam is seeing Shir HaShirim surely is Kodesh to the extent that the name Shlomo is Kodesh. Here I want to quote from Hilchot Tshuva, Rambam at the very end of Hilchot Tshuva, now that you've done Tshuva and you've become a perfected individual, and you're no longer a negative person, but you're a positive person, and you're making theological progress, and you want to be mekayem the mitzvah of avat Hashem, v'yavtat Hashem Elokecha b'chol avcha v'chol avshecha b'chol modecha. Ketzad hi ha'ava ruya. How should one behave with this love of God? Hu sheyohav et Hashem ba'ava gedola yitera azam ma'od עד שתהי נפשו קשורה באהבת השם ונמצא שוגה בה תמיד כאילו חולי האהבה שאין דעתו פנויה מאהבת אותו אישה. Rambam himself is creating a metaphor here. The love for God should be like the love of a mortal woman that completely occupies this person's thoughts and activities all day. והוא שוגה בה תמיד, בין בשבתו, בין בקומו, and it echoes, בשבתך וקומך, בשוכבך וקומך, ולכתך בדרך, בין בשעה שהוא אוכל ושותה, יתר מזה תהיה אהבת השם בלב אוהביו שוגים בה תמיד, כמו שציוונו בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך. והוא ששלמה אמר דרך משל, כי חולת אהבה אני, וכל שיר השירים משל הוא לעניין זה. Rambam is now revealing his interpretation of Shir HaShirim. He makes no attempt to actually explicate for us what actually is the mashal and the mashal of Shir HaShirim. He's telling us this is the mashal. What is mashal? This. I just said this. This what? Is Rambam saying that you have to love God like a woman, and if you don't have that capacity, you can't love God? He might be saying that. Someone who doesn't have the capacity to love a person may not have the capacity to love God, but that's not really his point. His point, and I think this is a very important point, and I want to start working towards a conclusion here, without specifying a specific nimshal, which I am totally not capable of doing. I want to point out three different paths that various parshanim have taken over the centuries to understanding Shir HaShirim. Rashi, we'll start with Rashi and then we'll come back to this Rambam. Rashi understands, basically like Chazal, that Shir HaShirim is a metaphor for the relationship of Am Yisrael to God. Am Yisrael chases after God. The girl is Am Yisrael. God is the Dod. God is Shlomo in the story. He sometimes seems to be a shepherd, sometimes seems to be the king. Maybe he's a king, a shepherd who she sees him as a king. There are a lot of ways of understanding. You know, the mashal itself is somewhat impenetrable, so the nimshal is going to be even more difficult. But Rashi understands, like Chazal, that it's the relationship between Am Yisrael and God. But Rashi takes it a step further. Rashi consistently, through the text, makes overt references to the downtrodden state of Bnei Israel in the Galut in contemporary times that Rashi is living in. Rashi seems to have invented Hasidic Torah. He has personalized this whole thing for Am Yisrael, but in the contemporary time, Rashi is not writing about Bnei Israel Bamidbar seeking out God. Rashi is writing about Bnei Israel in Galut, downtrodden, abused by the Goyim, and God is hiding from them. And then when God seeks them out, they're hiding from him. And this back and forth relationship that hopefully ends with a happy ending. That's one way of understanding it. Rambam, what he does here, V'chol shir hashirim mashal hu le'inyan zeh, which inyan zeh? Ki cholat hava ani, Like the man who is lovesick for the woman, so too the man, Rambam, me, you, each of us individually, not as Am Yisrael. Rambam is seeing the metaphor of Shir HaShirim is the individual perfected Yehudi trying to develop his relationship with God. It's not about Am Yisrael, but about the individuals who make up Am Yisrael. So that's a very, very different approach to how to understand Shir HaShirim. Then later, the Mekubalim took it to a different place altogether. And they see the Ra'aya, the female element in the story of Shir HaShirim, as the Shekhinah, trying to reunite with the Godhead. And the pain of separation of the created world from the Creator. And, ties into the tzimtzum of their philosophy that God created space in which to create the world, but in doing so, distanced himself from the creation. So it's a love story between the creation and the Creator, having nothing to do with people, having nothing to do with us. It's a metaphor for the pain of separation, the created world and the Creator. Obviously, we don't have answers. We could tell a little bit of the story, but I'm sure you could grab any translation, and every translation is going to have its angle about what the story is. I just want to point out one small little thing at the beginning of Yitzhak Arama, who wrote the Akira Yitzhak, the Parshan in his own right. He writes in the opening, Shir HaShirim Asher L'Shlomo. And he's just focusing on, there we go, Shir HaShirim Asher L'Shlomo. Where are we? There we are. No, there it is. Okay. And he looks at that and he says, what's this L'Shlomo? So Yitzhak Arama says, this was a love poem sent to Shlomo, not by Shlomo. He realizes that's a little radical, and he says, or alternatively, being that the whole thing is written from the perspective of the woman, Shlomo had incredible insight into female emotions, and he wrote his Shir HaShirim from the perspective of the woman based on his amazing psychological insights. Another perspective on this is that this is the song that Shlomo sang. Shlomo sang this as a love story, obviously with multi-layer. So I want to stop here. I don't want to start going into the story itself because, number one, we've been going on too long, and for another, because I don't think it will lead us anywhere. I have no special insights on this. If anything, what I'm trying to show is that no one really knows. Everyone can speculate. Everyone's speculations are legitimate. Obviously, Rashi's opinion on this is much more valuable than mine. But it's written from a very specific perspective, with a specific agenda. And we should learn Shir HaShirim. Rabbi Akiva says it's Kodesh Kodeshim. Ve'olam lo kedai ki yom shenitna. The verb nitna, kind of like Matan Torah, that Shir HaShirim was given as a gift. So Shir HaShirim shouldn't be ignored just because we have no idea what it means. We should learn it, but we should realize that what we're learning is a superficial attempt to learn something that's actually very, very complex. And Chazal held it in very high regard, but didn't quite leave us the tools to fully understand it. But we'll try. That's what we should try to do. So, Mo'adim l'simcha, and Mitzvah Hashem will meet again in a week. Questions?
Thank you, Nachum.
You're welcome, Mark. Questions, anyone? Okay, let's go home. Mark, log us out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.